Hello, hello, everyone. Welcome. Happy Monday to a fresh edition of Futbol Americas. I'm Alexis Nunes alongside the Hercules Gomez, who put on a blazer for us today. And Jeff Carlisle is joining us live and in the flesh. So that means this is a tie. You don't have a tie, though. Jeff had to get suited and booted. That's why I also put on a dress for this, because it's a special edition of Futbol Americas now that we are about 100 days away from the FIFA World Cup right here in the USA, Canada, and Mexico. And our squad would not be complete without our favorite goalkeeper alongside Shaka Hislop. But Casey Keller is joining us because we do have a lot to talk about. We've got 5 main groups of things to talk about, indeed, and we're going to get to them right now because we know that, of course, the USA, that's going to be our first area of focus right now. The U.S. men's national team, a lot of eyes on them. A lot of eyes will be on them, and we want to know exactly what their success bar should be for this World Cup, because we know that the USA has famously made the quarterfinals of a World Cup before. That kind of set the bar. Now this is a different format, an expanded World Cup. It is on home soil. We talk about how this should be the most talented squad of U.S. players that we have seen more and more playing over Europe. So is it quarterfinals or bust for the USA, Herc?
Can we, for a second, talk about the expectations and how one gets there, how thin the margins are, how fine the lines are? Let's see. The 2 most recent that I could think of, the 2002 World Cup, and Casey was part of this group, historical quarterfinal appearance, where they were a blown handball, Torsten Frings on the goal line, Greg Berhalter corner kick, away from being in a semifinal in our modern era. Casey will tell you that World Cup, they went 1-1-1 in group play. The last game of group play lost by multiple goals to Poland, and were on their way home until South Korea backdoored the U.S. men's national team to the next round with a goal versus Portugal out of nowhere. They did what they did. Then you go to South Africa, Confederations Cup, Bob Bradley's 2-0 halftime lead that ends up going the other way, 3-2, finalist versus Brazil in the Confederations Cup. They lost the first 2 games and were backdoored through the format. They did what they needed to do, but the margins are so small here, so thin. 2 scenarios, 2 very likely scenarios, and if the U.S. wants the best scenario, they have to win the group. What I think is a highly contested group. A group where any one of those participants, and Turkey, if it is the playoff winner, will feel like they can win the group. If you win the group, most likely scenario, if everything goes to plan, is a 3rd place team that you should most likely get by. And in the round of 16, Belgium. And after you beat this version of Belgium, if you can do that, a quarterfinal appearance versus Spain. And that's the end of the road. That is really what it is. If all goes to plan, that would be a beautiful scenario if all goes to plan for the U.S. men's national team. And then you take your chance against Spain. Mauricio Pochettino wants his miracle on ice moment for the U.S. men's national team. That would be it versus Spain. But if you come second in this group, it's Argentina in the next round. So people realize how difficult things will be this World Cup. Look at Morocco last World Cup. They had the CONCACAF winner in Canada, a golden generation in Belgium, and a World Cup finalist in Croatia. After that, you had the likes of Portugal, Spain, France. And let's say they would have beaten France. You have to add another game to it because now there's another round. Another World Cup probably winning contender or a team that can contend to win the World Cup. Quarterfinals, if they're lucky, is the end of the road, and that's got to be the bar.
Jeff, do you agree?
For the most part. I agree with her. It's going to depend so much on who they face in those knockout rounds. Obviously, they have to get there first. Because this is a tricky group, especially if Turkey is the team that comes through the playoff from Europe. So I do think the minimum expectation, absolute minimum, is getting out of the group and then getting to the round of 16. I mean, I think that's very doable. Actually, I think if they get knocked out in the round of 32, then it's going to be a disappointment, a blown opportunity, because this is just an amazing moment for U.S. soccer and for this team, because they have the opportunity to really captivate the nation and really drive the sport forward in a way that we haven't seen very many times. I mean, we were used to seeing it most every World Cup, and then 2018 came around and the U.S. obviously didn't get there. But, it's a huge chance to really have these guys go down in U.S. soccer history as legends. And so you don't want to let that pass you by. And I think if they can get to the round of 16, again, if they end up facing a Belgium or an Argentina, there's not going to be any disgrace in that if they lose. So, I think, again, round of 16 is probably the most likely endpoint for them, but it's tournament football, so we'll have to see what happens.
It's tournament football indeed. Before I just go to Casey on this one, of course, Herc just said, Jeff, that realistically the USA could set themselves up best by winning the group. Anything else, and you're already entering murky waters. So is winning the group, when you look at the opponents now, and we will see, of course, who the next one will be, is that a realistic ask for this current crop of players? It's
a realistic ask, but it's one of those groups where on any given day, any team in that group can win. And the U.S. could win all 3 games. They could lose all 3 games. I mean, it's really that final line that they're having to walk. So, but yes, winning that group, that is going to make their lives so much easier and allow them to achieve their dream of really going deep in the tournament. But again, we'll have to see what happens.
All right, well, as Herc said, Casey was part of that U.S. team that now has set that quarterfinal bar. We keep hearing about it. So, Casey, as you would know, it has to be quarterfinals or bust for this squad, right?
I still feel that a lot of it just depends on who you play in the next round. I mean, first and foremost, win your games, get out of the group stage. That's first and foremost. That's what you have to do, particularly with the expanded field with 8 third-place finishers going through. But obviously, Herc made the point. If you finish lower in that, then it gets more and more complicated. The more, the higher you can finish, the easier your next round opponent's going to be. But let's go back to Qatar. We ended up playing the Dutch, the 32. Do you honestly think that the U.S. should have beat the Dutch in the round of 32? And I think that's the question mark, is that realistic? Who's the opponent, and is it realistic that we beat them? Do we want to have some great miracle on ice moment? Of course we do. We want to beat the Dutch. We want to beat the Spanish. We want to beat Argentina. Of course, but you still have to look at it from a realistic standpoint.
Considering the USA has already made it to the quarterfinals, Herc, and this is the thing, because of course
third place finish, by the way, the USA.
Yeah, well, we're talking about the modern era when all of us were at least born, Herc. Unless I don't know if anyone was born in the 1930s, so we're not going to count that one. Maybe our Stevie Nickel, but success. That is the word that we have up there on the topic bar. The US has already had a quarterfinal berth. So would it still feel like a success if they just repeat that this time around?
It would not feel like it, no, by no means, no. It would actually feel like
semi-final would make it a success.
Well, semi-final would make it a miracle, to be honest. And look, let's just call a spade here. Morocco had one of the craziest schedules you could ever imagine and made it to a semi-final. With this current format, throw another World Cup contender into that. Throw another team that could be a semi-finalist in any other format into that. It gets that much more difficult. But I am of the train of thought that if the U.S. men's national team was ever going to do anything of worth in a World Cup, certainly at home, in a World Cup with what many presume is the pool with the most talented players you've ever had, with a coach of a European pedigree and an investment made in this program, certainly this would be the moment. But what about this team and its past makes us feel that come Spain, they can deal with the Spain. This version of Spain. This Spain right now with their individual players, Lamine Yamal, who's going to wreak havoc on anyone, let alone this back line, which has shown trouble. Let alone these center backs, which have shown how long in the tooth they are. We may be asking too much. Is it a failure in terms of what we expected in this World Cup heading into it? Yes. But realistically, that could be the bar.
All right, now we're about to get into our second block for this one, and this has to do with Mauricio Pochettino and the pressure that the U.S. men's national team definitely will face as hosts of a World Cup. Now, we're going to start out with Pochettino because this was the big name signing. This was the big name coach that so many people felt the USA needed and deserved. And one of the conversations we've had over years now is what is the identity of this U.S. team? So now, 100 days out, Casey's laughing because I think everyone's still searching for the answer, but let me try to get the answer from you guys. Herc, I'll start with you on this one again. What is the identity now of this U.S. men's national team under Mauricio Pochettino, 100 days out from a World Cup?
Well, I think they have found an identity, if I'm being quite honest. And happy birthday to Mauricio Pochettino, whose birthday today.
Feliz cumple!
Feliz cumpleaños to Mauricio Pochettino. This team during Mauricio Pochettino, before Mauricio Pochettino, was soft. Okay? It was a team that if you got in their face, they backed down. It was a team that when the moment got great, they buckled. And somewhere along the lines, and I do feel it was the last 5-6 friendlies, that changed. The message changed. The culture changed. Somewhere along that summer, where Christian Pulisic, Yunus Musa don't show up, where the group is divided between the Gold Cup, Club World Cup, and those who aren't there, a line was drawn in the sand. And that line was, you're with this program or you're not. I don't care who you are, if you think you're a household name or not, you got to show up, you got to put in the work, you got to be here for the group. And that was established. And out of that, some names emerged. A Sebastian Berhalter, a Christian Roldan reemerged, Patrick Agyemang for a bit, Max Arfsten, Matt Freese. And because of that, some big names went out. A Matt Turner, a Yunus Musa, and so on and so on and so forth. The line has been drawn. Here, you fight. Here, you claw. Here, it doesn't matter who you are. You have to put in the work. And then tactically, little by little, we started seeing them find their form. They like 3 in the back, the 3 center backs, the outside backs providing the width, the 2 playmakers underneath the 9, and you started seeing a little bit of maybe what you could expect come summertime, and you feel a bit more comfortable about the identity, the cultural shift, and tactically how this team is going. It may have been very late, a lot more than I would have liked, a lot more than Casey would have liked, or Jeff would have liked for somebody who's making $6 million a year, but it came. Now, we saw the friendlies. We want to see it in a real game. We want to see it against real opposition. And quite frankly, I think the only thing I can complain about in these last 6 friendlies is I think there are still some doubts in Pochettino's mind, at least by his lack of consistency of who that starting 11 is.
And Jeff, now you've covered the U.S. men's national team for some time now, and even before this show, you have been speaking to ex-players, ex-coaches as well. For you, do you agree with Herc with what that change has come? We know Mauricio Pochettino spoke so much about wanting to change the culture of the sport here, and as it relates to his players. What do you feel has been the biggest change that you've noticed or other people are noticing since Pochettino's appointment?
There is a competitive tension now within the group. When you go back to Copa America, you could pick the lineup with your eyes closed. I mean, it's like, okay, we're going to have, Way on the wing, and we're going to have Adams in the middle, and Balogun was arriving on the scene. He was going to be up top. Yeah. And people were too secure. Players were too secure in their role, in where they stood in the team. And I think Mauricio Pochettino recognized that. I think he wanted to be sure that he was actually seeing what he was seeing. But then you saw players being left out of camps. Weston McKennie a couple times was left out. You saw, other players not getting the playing time that you would normally expect. I mean, you think about that Uruguay game. There was no Pulisic, there was no McKennie. If I'm not mistaken, there was no Chris Richards. I mean, the list goes on. And so what that did was it gave some players who didn't think they had a chance before, it gave them a real opportunity to impress the staff, really stake their claim to a spot. You look at guys like Sebastian Berhalter, Malik Tillman is another one who I think really took his chance. Alex Freeman. That started at the Gold Cup. I mean, I was certainly questioning some of the selections then, and if really going with almost a youth movement was the right move. It turned out to be a master stroke, at least at this stage. So I go back to that competitive tension. Guys didn't know if they were going to play or not. And so I think that has kind of helped compensate for the fact that there was no World Cup qualifying. Because usually that tension is created by qualifying. And, guys, if they're on the outside looking in, okay, how do I get good with the coach? How do I figure out what he wants? How do I, if I'm a starter, how do I keep that position? And so that's usually there, but because there was no World Cup qualifying, again, guys got comfortable And now I think that's gone. I think it's a real meritocracy now that Mauricio Pochettino has created. And I think it's benefited the whole squad because it's a much deeper squad than what it was. I mean, obviously we'll find out at the World Cup just how deep it actually is and how guys perform. But certainly that competitive tension, I keep going back to that is really the big difference for me.
Competitive tension. I love that phrase, man. Nothing like some healthy competition. And Casey, that's what you want. You want to keep them guessing. That's something that we've talked about a lot. Has that been the biggest change you've noticed under Pochettino, or what do you think the identity under Poch is now?
Well, it was the biggest change that had to happen because players took their foot off the gas. And that's inexcusable. I mean, every good team in the world, you should be able to pick the starting 11. Because those players are the best players in the squad. They're the best players that are fighting for everything, the best players all the way around. And instead, we had this situation where he had to build competition because the guys that should have been competing weren't. And that worries me a little bit because, Jeff, I like the idea that we have this big squad, but we do not have a big squad. We have a group of players that are, if we want to go deep in this tournament, we need our stars to show up and give everything they can and have great tournaments. Then you need a couple little surprise packages, and then you need some other guys just to have good, steady games. But the fact that we had to go through all this, the fact that we had no competitive matches, but it had somehow lost this competitive edge, frightened me. And yes, I'm relieved that it's emerged in the last couple friendlies, and we've seen this little bit of an edge. Now it has to continue.
Well, it's going to be a home World Cup, and we know that that invites a different kind of pressure that a lot of these players are not going to be familiar with. I don't care how big of a club game they have been involved in. Herc, this is obviously going to be the biggest stage for a lot of these players, and we don't know the roster yet, but who would you like to see really embrace this type of a tournament?
I'm going to answer, but I'm going to piggyback on what Casey said. I'm going to echo that. I think it's crucial that you know who you can count on. It's crucial that those players you think are going to be your 11 get as many reps together as they can. And you're going to head into the World Cup. Maybe they get 2-3 games together. If Mauricio Pochettino, come March, says, this is my team, this is my 11, you get 2-3 games together, and you're hoping that the players you think you can count on are fit, are healthy, and informed, and can be that fit, healthy, and informed together. I think that's a dangerous thing to rely on, and I'm with Casey there. Listen, we can talk about the feel-good stories about Diego Luna. We could talk about the feel-good stories about Sebastian Berhalter, the ex-U.S. men's national team coach's son, or Alex Freeman, or Max Armstead, or whoever you want to insert here. But if Christian Pulisic isn't at his optimum level, if Christian Pulisic isn't healthy, because I don't believe he's healthy right now, if he's not geared and ready to go, I don't care what you think you're doing in this World Cup, it's not happening. He is the different one in the program. He's the difference maker. He has the ability, because you're going to be defending a lot, I presume, to change a game in transition, to change a game on a set piece, to change a game with creativity and the finishing product. If he's not ready for you, it's over.